All right, welcome everybody. We'll give everybody a second to go ahead and get in and get settled. It is raining out, I'm sure, for every single person that's going to join this call. I hope everybody is staying safe and retains their internet access through this meeting and the whole day. Yeah, this Pineapple Express is no joke. All right, so as we're getting started here, I'll just say hello to you all. Thank you for coming back for the California Climate and Energy Collaboratives team. Our LERN meeting, this is our 17th time getting together for the Local Energy Resources Network. And as always, we love if you turn your webcam on if you're comfortable. And we'd also really appreciate if you could introduce yourself in the chat in whatever way you're comfortable with while we get started here. And tell us how you're doing in the rain. How's it hitting you from where you are in your neck of the woods? So let's go ahead to the next slide. Let's talk about what we're going to do here together today. It's a little bit of a different format today than our typical LERNs, where we have maybe one speaker speaking for a longer period of time. Today, we're really fortunate to have 3 speakers with us today. So I'll introduce myself. So I'm Angie Hacker. I'm the Statewide Best Practices Coordinator, joined today by a couple of other members of the SEEK team, Tila and John. They're going to introduce themselves over chat as well, and you can always contact them if you have any technical issues. And just a reminder, we come together for this hour once a month because we're trying to design a regular space where local governments and those that work with them can help each other learn about, simply inform available opportunities to advance their energy and climate goals. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about today, and we're really fortunate. So after we get through our opportunity roundtable, where there's, fast and furious, lots of things going on, we have 3 speakers joining us. So today we are really excited to be joined first by Misti Bruceri. She's with the Statewide Reach Codes Program. And then we're going to go to Tracy Ruiz. She was with Grid Alternatives in a program she's going to explain, which is Access to Clean California. And we're going to wrap up with a presentation from Jody London from the County of Contra Costa, who's going to talk to us about some important legislation for those of you working in climate action plan. All right, so let's go ahead and dive on in. So you guys know the drill by now. This is our opportunity roundtable. It's a first opportunity for this to be interactive. And so we really appreciate when you all help us keep our ear to the ground in terms of what's going on around the state. Please add any opportunities in the chat, funding, events, input opportunities, other opportunities for assistance. We really appreciate you all telling us what we might not already know. So with that, let me also remind us, last time we introduced a new service, I suppose, pretty informal, something we're calling a need and have board. And it's an informal way to flag interest in partnership between jurisdictions. So bring it now, because you might be thinking about, oh, I have this thing that I want to be able to share with others that they could benefit from, my peers across the state. Or maybe you have a need and you want, you're looking for some help. So it might look like things like, I'm from XX jurisdiction and I need a grant writer. We're looking for partners in an application. We have an RFI out for this, and that. I have a template to share. Site for a pilot project. That's what the Need and Have board is. We just debuted it last month and we're just trying to continue it. It's kind of like an informal digital community board. All right, so I want to start off with just letting folks know, if you haven't already heard, that in the last few days, President Biden released his proposed fiscal year 2023-24 budget. So we'll link that over in the chat. It's worth a look. So according to the fact sheet that we're linking over to you, it says the budget builds on historic progress by advancing clean energy and investing in climate science, strengthening resilience and advancing environmental justice. And it invests a total of $52.2 billion in discretionary budget authority to tackle the climate crisis. And that's about 26% more than last year. So pretty significant investment. It's important to see this at the federal level, just because we know the state of California's budget is different, and we might actually see a drop in these kinds of investments this year. And so I would just welcome you to take a look. I started looking through, I think there's some interesting stuff there. a lot for environmental justice, and a lot for the kinds of initiatives you all are working on. Again, this is a proposed budget, so it still has to go through Congress. This is a formal. All right, so let's talk about some of the movement and some of the funding opportunities. So we've been talking about some of these for quite some time. I just do want to make sure you all are aware that there's a couple that are coming due. So we've been talking about OPR's adaptation planning grant. That's going to be due at the end of the month. So if you're working on that, you've got a couple weeks left. And we've been bringing up here that one and the other one on the horizon, which is the Regional Resilience Planning and Implementation Grant, which is not yet live. Those two have some surprising provisions in there that actually make it very valuable for this network, even on the mitigation side or the energy resilience side. And then the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities Program, that's due on April 4th. So a couple of those, we've talked about them in the past. These are big opportunities that are really eligible for local governments and their partners. But a new one that's moved up from on the horizon is the EPA's Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. And so this is a brand new program out of the EPA, IRA funded. And I'm breaking it up here because there's now the guidance is available and you can submit. And what's really interesting about this one is they have actually designated 60-something, 61, 67 metropolitan statistical areas that are eligible for $1 million for phase one, which is a planning. And so there is a link, and we'll share it in the chat, to this program, and a link specifically to that list, the metropolitan statistical areas. And there's lots of California metropolitan areas listed. Not all of you will be there, but if you're there, you'll want to keep the date of April 28th in mind. That's when the notice of intent is due to say, yeah, we intend to take that $1 million. Thank you very much. And then a full application being due on May 31st. So a nice one here. I have to look closer. I actually want to bring the EPA in here. I think it's sort of less competitive. It's more formulaic and less competitive than others, but I don't know that's a guaranteed $1 million. You certainly at least have to file the notice of intent and the application. Another new one here, it's not exactly a grant, but it's called the Buildings Upgrade Prize, and it's from the Department of Energy. So for phase one, we're looking to select winners for this prize between March and May, and it seems like it's kind of first come, first served until funds are expended. This program is offering to over $22 million in prize funds and technical assistance to winning teams, and it's designed to build capacity for accelerating equitable, widespread energy efficiency and electrification upgrades in existing buildings across the country. And so it's talking about upgrades, including transition to efficient electric equipment, such as heat pumps and heat pump water heaters, improving building efficiency through measures like insulation and air sealing. So it's inviting community-based organizations, tribes, local governments, portfolio building owners, utilities, trade associations, nonprofits, and energy efficiency program implementers, pretty much everybody on this call, and other organizations to team up and submit innovative concepts to leverage the billions of dollars available through the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act, and utility rebate programs, and many other funding sources. So it's worth taking a look at. We'll drop that link in too. So it's basically submitting a proposal for a prize. And the prizes, from what I saw, it looks like it's maybe up to $400,000, depending on the type of project you're submitting. Okay, so that one was brand new. We haven't talked about it before, but we have talked about the next one highlighted here in yellow. That's the Transformative Climate Communities. In fact, we had the Strategic Growth Council here last month talking all about it. So you can always go back and reference that if you want a lot more details on this program. But this is one of the major opportunities for local governments working on climate related activities and emission reductions, along with other related co-benefits and goals. So this one is moved up. It's actually live now. So the applications are due August 1st, 2023. If you want application assistance, it's available now. So they have free TA through the Strategic Growth Council. And just a reminder from our last session where we had Strategic Growth Council here, these grants offer a few different types of grants. So the one is a planning grant up to $300,000. Another type is a project development grant up to $5 million. And then the big one is an implementation grant for multiple strategies and projects up to 29.5. So, substantial. The next thing I want to talk about here is under input. So SEEK has been coordinating with CARB regularly, trying to tackle, and address some of the needs that you all are sharing with us around local climate action planning. And we don't have anything to share with you in terms of a link yet, but we have agreed on a date for a listening session. We actually want to conduct 3 listening sessions this year on this topic with CARB because we think it's a big opportunity to work together to try to unlock local potential here and figure out how we can get through the climate action planning process more easily around the state. So just for now, to save the date for April 26th, that's going to be our first listening session. So you're going to see more details coming and you're on our list. So expect to see a little bit of outreach coming out and you'll be invited to register to participate for that first listening session on this topic. So we're really, feel free to invite folks from your jurisdiction that are really closely tied to the climate action process. Those that really know the nuts and bolts, potentially those that actually oversee the inventory and the development of strategies, because we want to get into sort of deconstructing where are the problems and the barriers in the process that the state may be able to. And then finally, I just want to mention under other assistance here that CivicWell has its applications live for folks that are willing to host the Civic Spark Fellow. And I'll just chime in, like I always do, to say Civic Spark is great. I did AmeriCorps back in a billion years ago when I was in college. It's an AmeriCorps program. And when I was at a county, I brought in a fellow from Civic Spark and they were fantastic. And it's so basically having subsidized staffing for about a year. And you can apply now. It's a simple process. And if you need help, you can always reach out to folks here at CivicWell. The other items there under other assistance are just some of the events I'm seeing around the state that are more knowledge building, capacity building opportunities that I just wanted to make sure you were aware of. And of course, keep listening in on our weekly. A lot of this information gets out on a weekly basis on our weekly update. All right, I'm just going to quick scan the chat to see if anybody else shared anything that would be good to say out loud for the full group. Lots of introductions. All right, good introductions. Again, please feel free if you have an announcement or something, an opportunity to share, you can put it here. And also don't forget about the Need Have board if you have a need or you have something that you can offer to others. Okay, so with that, I think it's a great time to introduce our first guest, and a lot of you know her. So we have Misti Bruceri, and she's a coordinator and technical lead for the Statewide Reach Codes Program. And I asked her here because they have a set of newly released templates that are designed to help municipalities develop their local reach codes. And so she's going to present for a few minutes on those templates that are going to help a lot of you out there doing this code work. And then we'll take a few questions afterwards. So please go ahead and listen in, and where you have questions, just drop your questions right in the chat. All right, Misti, thanks for being here. Take it away.
Alrighty, thank you very much, Angie. Thank you for inviting me today. And as Angie said, we have I'm here to announce a new suite of resources that we've developed. I must say that this was a collaborative effort. It wasn't just developed by our statewide team. This was a repeat. We started this effort actually in the last code cycle. Essentially, what we discovered in the last code cycle is that there were several different organizations. We were all working on similar resources for local jurisdictions. And so we got together with many different jurisdictions. We invited several jurisdictions with reach codes to talk with us about the types of resources that jurisdictions need to implement a reach code. Most of the program focuses on adopting reach codes, but as we all know, that's just the first step in the process. Once you adopt the reach code, you actually have to implement it to make it worthwhile. And so what we heard from jurisdictions is that there's actually two needs. The first is to have a checklist or some information about the ordinance that they can use at the permit counter. So that can be used by both internal staff as well as permit applicants. That explains the requirements of an ordinance and allows people to kind of go through maybe a checklist or something like that is what they had requested. And we found that the checklist as well as a training module were the two requests that we received most often from most jurisdictions. And so we focused on those resources. And what we've done is we've developed a template structure that is designed for local modification. And so this was developed by several different groups, as I mentioned, LERN, the Building Decarb Coalition, SEEK was involved as well, the Statewide Reach Codes team, several jurisdictions, a couple of CCAs, PCE and SVCE. So we had a whole bunch of folks working on it. And so what we've come up with, like I said, is this suite of templates that is designed for local governments to make your own. And so what we have are checklists, essentially. And you can see just a sample of the checklist on the slide here. I'm not going to go through the whole list. It's a pretty straightforward list, and they're templates, so they're not specific to any jurisdiction. But the way that they're formatted is they are very comprehensive. Each checklist includes requirements, all the possible requirements we could think of for a particular ordinance. And the reason it's done like that is under the theory that when a local jurisdiction goes to modify this checklist and make it their own, it's much easier to remove things than to add new. And so you'll see that they're fairly comprehensive, but you can just cut many of the things out that you don't need. The way that they're designed is there's this blue text that either provides instructions or highlights areas that need to be modified and need to be edited by the jurisdiction. So you can see up at the top, it tells you you can add some language here. It's optional. You get into the first paragraph and there's a couple of places where you can put your jurisdiction name. You can add the jurisdiction logo up top. There's a place for the website. And that kind of format goes through the whole set of checklists. And so what we've got are checklists for both new buildings, new construction, as well as existing buildings. And we've formatted them separately for single family, multifamily, and non-residential. And so we've got quite a suite of checklists and also other materials that can be used at the counter. And so there may be some ordinances have exceptions. And so there may be a form that you want to fill out for exceptions. So we've got a template for that as well. We have measure specification templates, things like that make it a little bit easier to fill that out and make it your own. Kind of a second goal with that is to kind of provide the flexibility that we need and also keep a common core so that the checklists kind of stay in a similar format, even though they have specific information for each jurisdiction. That way, the people that are using them, if they work in multiple jurisdictions, they can do that easily. We've also designed a training module that is made for internal modification, internal short trainings. You can pick and choose modules out of it and do that kind of training, or LERN also will do training in the Bay Area based on this module. So there's several different resources available. If you go to the next slide, John, that would be great. We have posted these resources on about 4 different websites. And so I've made a slide for you to see that because they are available in several different places. They're available here on the Local Energy Codes website. We have divided the resources into new construction and existing buildings on our website. The 3 others actually keep them all together. And so you need to make some selections here. BayAreaReachCodes.org is one place you can get it, LERN, and also the Building Decarb Coalition. In addition, I've provided just a couple of other generally handy resources for our Explorer tool, a webinar series for newcomers to Reach Codes that we put together with BayREN and several others, and SEEK. And then also a link to the cost effectiveness studies in case you're interested in those. So, thank you very much, Angie. I appreciate you inviting me to talk today, and I hope that everybody will check out the resources. And please, these are living documents. As we are getting feedback, we continually refine them. So we'd be happy to hear any of your thoughts as you begin to use them. So thank you.
Thank you, Misty. That was great. I hope for those of you working on codes around the state that you can take advantage of these resources, but really just know that Misty's group exists and there's calls, lots of resources all over their website. And if you're sort of new, a lot of what she's doing is helping local governments avoid starting from scratch when they're starting the Reach Code process. It can be complicated and a lot to learn, and she's really taking a lot of the burden off of local government shoulders. So thanks for all that work, Misty. There was a question from Corey. He's just saying, are the templates posted online? And then we have actually linked here to where they are located. So if you have other questions for Misty, go ahead and raise your hand or throw something in the chat. I have one question for you, Misty. So I was just wondering, now that you've done so much for all local governments around the state working on this stuff, where do you see folks having the biggest barrier when they start the process? Where are folks getting tripped up the most?
Ooh, it is right at the very beginning. If you haven't done it before, one of the biggest barriers that I've seen is familiarity with the codes and the requirements that are based on the energy code, especially. Not everybody that works in sustainability is familiar with the energy code, and the code is kind of the basis for many of these ordinances. So that can be a little bit tricky to navigate, but there's a lot of resources to help you understand what you need to for that. I think that's one of the biggest barriers.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, thanks for being a good partner for us. We've also put in the chat how to contact Misty's team if you'd like more information or just need some help. Misty's always very accommodating. So thanks again, Misty, for being here.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Right. All right, all. So a little bit more of a lightning round on presentations today. And our next presenter, we're very pleased, is Tracy Ruiz. She is the Senior Manager for Community Outreach Partnerships for Grid Alternatives. And somebody from the LERN audience actually recommended that I reach out here and see if they're willing to present, because they are participating in administering a program called Access Clean California. She's going to talk to you a little bit about that program, which is of value to local governments, but your constituents as well. And talking a little bit about some available EV incentives that are offered through this platform. And so again, she'll present, and then afterwards we'll take some questions. So please be sure to throw any questions for Tracy in the chat, and we'll handle those in just a few minutes. So thanks for being here, Tracy. You can go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Angie. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. My apologies ahead of time. I have no voice for whatever reason. I'm sick. So if you have a hard time listening, feel free to ask me questions in the chat as well, and I'm happy to repeat myself. But as Angie said, my name is Tracy Ruiz. I'm the Senior Program Outreach Partnerships Manager for Grid Alternatives. So I work specifically on Access Clean California and what we call our Outreach Partner Network, but I also work grid-wide to help streamline our structures and processes and our community-based organization relationships and partnerships. So today I'm really going to just take some time to introduce you all to the program Access Clean California, which is focused on clean transportation incentives from the California Air Resources Board at the moment, but we are looking to expand Access Clean California's offerings to offer local utility programs as well, which might be of interest to all of you. So just to give you a little bit of background on Access Clean California, as you all know, clean transportation is an equity issue. Our main priority communities are underserved communities, underinvested communities that have previously been impacted by environmental injustices. They are the communities that are most impacted by tailpipe emissions in their communities that are emitted. They are some of the lowest income earners, and they spend 4 times the amount of their income on gasoline. And then there are many equity programs that have been developed by state agencies. However, these households are still facing major barriers to accessing these programs. So our main goal here is to serve those communities in two different types of ways, which I'll dive into a little bit later. But here our mission at Access Clean California is really to help these communities access clean transportation. We want to prioritize and serve disadvantaged communities, amplify their voices in program design, not only in Access Clean California, but also any other programs that the California Air Resources Board is developing and implementing. We also want to promote transportation that works for their communities. So not necessarily focusing on EV-centric transportation, but whatever is most advantageous in their communities, for example, active mobility, e-bikes, things like that. We want to also create a model for a needs-based allocation of program funding. So we want to make sure that these programs that are equity programs are actually reaching the hardest to reach communities, and that they are being created in a way that are going to make it easier for them to access these programs. And then lastly, we want to support clients through a multi-step process. So I'll dive in a little bit into how Access Clean California came about, but one of the main barriers for folks being able to access these programs is just the confusion around all these different types of programs and all the different steps to be able to successfully apply for them and actually receive the incentives. So a little bit of background here on SB 350. Before we were Access Clean California, we were actually a pilot. We were called the One Stop Shop Pilot. It didn't really say what we did or what our goal was, but essentially we came from SB 350, where the California Air Resources Board was instructed to conduct a barrier study on all the barriers that low-income communities face to acquire clean transportation or to transition into clean transportation. So from that study, they identified 4 major barriers, and from those 4 major barriers, they identified the need for a one-stop shop for both education and for folks to be able to access the incentives in one centralized location. So those 4 barriers are here: community and physical, investment, awareness, and affordability. So community and physical is mainly access to the infrastructure in their communities to transition into clean transportation. Lack of stable investment in their communities to be able to have shared mobility and also EV incentives available to their community members. The third barrier here was the awareness that these programs even existed and were designed or created for their communities, and how they can tap into them. And then the last piece was affordability. So transitioning to clean transportation at the end of the day is a financial commitment if you are doing individual transportation. So how can we make all of these incentives easy to acquire in one place so that they can get the maximum benefit and really combine all these incentives in one place without having to go to multiple places and apply for 5 different incentives and then not really maximizing their best benefit and making it affordable for them to transition into EVs or shared transportation. So really the main barrier that Access Clean California is focusing on is the awareness piece through our outreach partner network with community-based organizations statewide. But while doing this, we're also touching on all the other barriers at the same time. That centralized application process we actually developed through our technology product called the Benefits Finder, which is both an eligibility engine that helps folks understand what programs they're eligible for that are available through the California Air Resources Board. But there's one step above that where we also help them apply for these programs in one place, and then also access so people can get all the transportation, the clean transportation that works for them in that one centralized place, and they're able to learn about clean transportation in our website, which I will actually chat to you all right now so you guys can take a look. So like I said, Access Clean California is making it easier for people to access the state's clean transportation and clean energy equity programs. Right now, what is available on the Access Clean California Benefits Finder and what's listed on there for folks is electric vehicle incentives to the California Air Resources Board, which includes the Clean Cars for All programs, statewide financing assistance programs, and the rebates. We also have the charging infrastructure programs and solar power through the Energy for All program, which is a single family solar program administered by Grid Alternatives as well. Transit vouchers, shared mobility options that are available, solar, like I mentioned earlier, and then also e-bikes through different Clean Cars for All programs, and hopefully in the future also the statewide e-bikes incentive. So these are some of the programs that are listed there for now, but like I mentioned earlier, we are also looking to expand to integrate some of the local utility EV programs as well. So like I mentioned, we do have two key strategies. The main strategy here that I focus on is the Coordinated Outreach for Equity program. So really working with community-based organizations to deploy tailored outreach strategies in their communities to connect community members with these programs and to inform them of the importance of clean transportation in their communities. And then the other piece to this is the streamlined user-centered application process through the Benefits Finder in our Access Clean California website that I chatted for all of you to take a look at. So how do we connect communities to programs? So this is a map of our statewide outreach partner network. So we work with climate justice and equity partners. We work with trusted community-based organizations, California's largest labor union, so SEIU, through their local chapters to inform their members of these programs that are available to them. And then we also work with Native American communities and sovereign nations. So keeping in mind that we are working with small grassroots organizations on the ground that need a lot of capacity building to be able to focus on this work, with very large organizations like the union who have a larger reach and can do more targeted outreach for their specific members around these programs. So we work with an array of different organizations and really provide tailored support for all of them to be able to engage in this work meaningfully and to amplify the voices of their communities and what their needs are around clean transportation. So here is a very extensive list of all of our partners. Like Angie mentioned, the Community Environmental Council actually connected us with all of you, who is part of our climate justice and equity partners, and is actually able to connect their communities with Access Clean California so that they can apply for these EV incentives. But we work with a ton of different CBOs. If you all work with any community-based organizations that are interested in taking part in this work or connecting their communities with these EV incentives, we are also looking to expand our outreach partner network, and we're going to start doing some listening sessions statewide to bring on some more organizations that's into our network. Initially, when we started off with 4 organizations, and since then in 2019, we've expanded into over 23 organizations. So it's a small growth, but we are always looking to meet new organizations, come in contact with different folks that are trying to connect their communities with these programs. And I'll share my contact information as well at the end so that you all, if you have any questions on how you can be a part of the network or how you can access the Benefits Finder or any of the resources we provide, I can support you all. But like I was mentioning, the Benefits Finder that I chatted in here is kind of a two type of eligibility engine. So it'll connect folks, it'll help folks identify the programs that they're eligible for. And then that step further, when they're coming through our outreach partners, is connecting communities directly with the applications and actually running their income verification process so that we're able to send all of their information to the programs all at once, without additional work from the community members. So we have built out this technology to work with the California Air Resources Board incentives. We are working on a manual to also be able to integrate with local utility EV incentives as well. And I think we'll come back later on in this year once we have that manual available to see if you all have any local EV rebates or programs that community members could potentially tap into through the Access Clean California Benefits Finder. And lastly, here's just a list of all the programs that are in there. We are integrated with 2 utility programs, so the Peninsula Clean Energy EV rebate, and then also the Empower EV, so a charging rebate or charging incentive. And like I said, we're building that piece out, and I think that's a key area for us to potentially work together if your local utilities have any EV programs that are available and could potentially work in the Access Clean California Benefits Finder. And yeah, so how can community members apply for programs? So like I mentioned, Access Clean California outreach partners are the folks that are mainly providing the education and awareness on the ground to their community members. Each outreach partner that works with us has a unique link that they use to the Benefits Finder where folks are able to kickstart their applications. So like I mentioned, we work with tons of organizations. They all have individual links and they're able to connect their community members directly that way. The Access Clean California eligibility engine for folks to be able to see what they're eligible for is open to the public. However, that won't kickstart their applications. Just because we want to make sure that our program is reaching the hardest to reach and that our resources are being directed to the folks that would have the hardest time applying for these programs. And yeah, that's basically it. I see there's a couple of things in the chat, but I don't know if folks have any questions that they'd like to unmute for.
Thank you, Tracy. Really great. I would welcome folks to raise their hand. There's some really good discussion happening in the chat. I kind of want to elevate up, but I can tell everybody is probably feeling like I am. We understand, those of us have done constituent-facing programs where you're trying to get engagement and participation from constituents. It's a little challenging and it can be very confusing. I wonder, if look at one thing, and then I'm going to actually ask people that have been chiming in the chat to raise that discussion up to this level a little bit. But where do you find yourself, in terms of competing with other programs? Where are you finding yourself in an environment where something already exists? Are you partnering with others, or is this really a vacuum where you're trying to meet a need that doesn't yet address well?
I wouldn't say that we're competing with other programs. I think that we're facilitating access for, like I said, the hardest to reach communities for all these programs. So we kind of see ourselves as a vacuum that's, sending them over to all the state agency programs. And then also potentially the local utilities. So it's like, these are the hardest to reach communities and we're simplifying their access to your program. So we're not necessarily competing, we're just providing additional resources and support for those community members.
For Tracy, it was more than just navigating people through the right programs, but there's a back end here that actually helps them get through the process of applying. Can you dive into that a little bit more?
Yeah, so what we call it is the income verification process. So we actually help folks become income verified for all these programs. Basically, it's a how do we say this? A pre-approval, I guess, to the programs where we're able to work with Veritax to be able to pull their tax records or work directly with the applicant to verify that they are eligible for multiple programs all at once based on their income. Then we send that information over to all of the programs so that they have kind of like the paperwork that says, yes, they are eligible based on this. Another piece that we're working on is including categorical eligibility as well. So if folks are already enrolled in programs for specific incomes, they don't have to submit additional paperwork or additional documentation that says I'm eligible for this program. We kind of just take that as a yes, okay, so they're approved, and then we send it again off to the other programs that they might be eligible for. So we're really just making that income verification process as easy as possible, because again, through that barrier study, it's one of the most difficult processes for them to overcome. It's one of the largest barriers, just because they have to pull tax transcripts or W-2s or 1040s and be able to gather all that information and send it over to multiple programs at the same time. So we're really centralizing that specific piece, and hopefully maybe in the future we're able to centralize a little bit more of the application process as well.
So sort of a first screening for the administrators of these programs. So helpful. Okay, so there are some questions now. Actually, Kelly Delaney, you've had some good things to say in here. You were talking about, wow, like, wouldn't it be great to have this for other kinds of programs, like efficiency? And you have a question here. Oh, that's interesting. What tool for income verification was that? And is it instant? And Kelly, do you actually just unmute yourself? You can share a little bit more about your comments here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Angie, and thanks, Tracy. Really interesting presentation. I work for an energy efficiency financing program at the state, Go Green Financing, and we are also just starting to come up against this issue of verifying income, because our contractors, right, home improvement contractors are our sort of people on the ground, and they're not able to confirm people's income eligibility the same way that a lender, for example, could. So sorry, I just missed it, but if you could repeat the name of that tool, and yeah, if it offers like an instant, is this something that a contractor could take into the field, for example?
No, so it's not instant. We work with Veritax. It does take a couple of weeks for us to receive their tax transcripts. But it is faster than folks, requesting information from the IRS directly, for example. So it is Veritax that we work with. And
it like returns a sort of like approved or not approved, or
just their tax. So we actually have a team of, sorry, I forgot to mention this piece of case managers that look through the tax transcript that the IRS sends us back through Veritax to do that approval. So it has a couple of steps. It's not just necessarily like they're approved for a program or not.
Yeah,
we kind of have to make sure that they're under the income levels.
Of course. Great. Thanks.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you, Kelly and Tracy. So Leslie is asking, is it in multiple languages?
Yeah, so actually the entire Access Clean California Benefits Finder was developed in partnership with our partners. So they helped us build this tool to meet the needs of their communities. We started off with just English, then we added Spanish, and now we have also included Vietnamese. We also have developed what's called a resource hub that has a ton of marketing collateral, educational collateral that is actually available in more than, I think it's 6 languages. So it includes Chinese, Tagalog, and then the other 3 languages that are on the benefits finder. But all of this was done with community input, and right now it's only in those 3 languages, the benefits finder. It's in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese, but the resources are a little bit in more extensive languages as well. But we are hoping to later on increase the number of languages that it's available in as well.
Perfect. And then there's some other comments in here from Cooper at Quick Carbon, and a lot of folks sharing programs that are sort of related. And we are hearing from Nick Peterson in Albany, California, He's sharing a good report. Joshua Niederhood from PG&E is also sharing some PG&E programs. Nick Peterson, oh, there we go again. Okay. Well, that's all the questions we have. I wondered if anybody else who had made a comment here wanted to share a little bit more about what they were discussing in the chat. We'll just leave it open for another minute before we move to our next topic. Okay, well, thanks for the good discussion, everybody. And there's one last comment here from Leslie, which I agree with. I've always had huge respect for Great Alternatives work. Love the details, Tracy. Thank you for the vote. And we want to say thank you as well from the SEEK team for being here, making time and sharing time. This really exciting program with the rest of our network. And we hope to have you back when you have more information about the program that you're working on, that you can actually bring in additional programs and work with more kinds of administrators.
Sounds great. Thank you all for having us.
All right. Thank you. All right, everybody. Nick, was that you raising your hand? Oh, okay. Just waving. Okay, well, let's move on to our last speaker of the day, and you all probably know her. We're gonna hear from Contra Costa. So Jody London is the sustainability coordinator for the County of Contra Costa, and I'm so excited to have her here to share a little bit about how local governments around the state can support a new piece of legislation that has been sponsored by her county, authored by her county and Civic Well. And it's SB 511, and she'll tell you all about it and tell you how you can get involved. So thank you so much for being here, Jody.
My pleasure, Angie. And John is going to stop sharing because I do have a deck. Amazing. Hopefully this will work. You should all be seeing it now. So my name is Jody London. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator for Contra Costa County. It is great to be here with you all today and share a little bit more about this piece of legislation and share how you can get involved with it. So can I advance? What is Senate Bill 511? It would direct the California Air Resources Board to prepare inventories of greenhouse gas emissions for all local governments, all cities and counties. It's sponsored, as you just heard, by our county and Civic Well. There was a letter in 2021, and all these, you'll have the deck. I can put all these links in when I'm not presenting because I'm not competent to do that. But all of there was a letter from over 100 local governments a couple of years ago saying, hey, Air Board, it would really help us out if you would prepare inventories rather than each of us trying to do it one-off or not doing it at all. So why do we need it? Right now, I can speak for my county. There's the unincorporated county and 19 cities. Maybe a third of those jurisdictions are preparing greenhouse gas inventories. And I think this is true across the state. Most cities are not preparing GHG inventories. They don't even have the staff to do it, right? Like you're maybe half an FTE and coming to this webinar is your thing for the week. And we are so glad you're here, but you need help. we all need help doing this. It can be very expensive to prepare a greenhouse gas inventory. It can run between $10,000 and $20,000 in my experience. And we just think it would make a lot of sense for the state to do this for local governments. The state does this in other issue areas. Caltrans publishes data annually on road and highway performance. Cal Recycle gives us data on solid waste. There's no reason why the Air Board shouldn't be able to do something similar for us with greenhouse gas emission inventories. We don't think it would be very expensive, and I'll get into that in a minute. So we used to get an inventory like this in Contra Costa County. We and Alameda County and the cities in the two counties were part of the East Bay Energy Watch. And through the East Bay Energy Watch, I'm going to call out Eli Crispy from PlaceWorks. He's here on the webinar today. And PlaceWorks helped us prepare an inventory for all of this. It was, I think, 32 jurisdictions between the two counties. And we all got the information that you see on the screen. It wasn't 100% of the emissions, but it was probably 85 to 90%. And it was good enough, right? And we were able to get this data pretty regularly. And it made it so much easier. We had local governments in Contra Costa who said, were it not for the EBU inventory, I would do nothing on climate action. I would have no information to share with my electeds. And when our partnership with PG&E was terminated a couple of years ago, bye-bye inventory. So we as the county are a larger jurisdiction and we're updating our climate action plan. We're able to do that. But now many of our cities are not preparing greenhouse gas emission inventories. We would get streamlined data collection, and we'll make the slides available to you. You know, it was just easy to kind of plug and play. It wasn't a super complicated thing. There was a little bit of work for the local governments, but not a lot. And then they had this thing, and it would give you graph outputs. It was a nice tool. The estimated costs for us to do this were, as you can see here, pretty low. And this was from a 2019 presentation that we did. We think that to do this statewide, you could probably do it if we followed similar protocols for $2.5 million max. So that is what the bill is. I'm happy to take questions. And then there's a lot of information here, and I'll try to get all these links into the chat about how you can help us. The first hearing is going to be in a couple of weeks before the Senate Environmental Quality Committee. We're very grateful to Senator Catherine Blakespear from the Orange County and San Diego area for sponsoring the bill. And we really need all of your support. I will tell you, the Air Board does not think this should be their job. They do not want to do this. So they are kind of kicking and screaming. I don't want to say kicking and screaming, but they're not super enthusiastic about this. And there's the budget stuff. So we really need local governments to show up. Let your legislators know this matters to you, and it will help your jurisdiction do more on climate action. So that's really what I have, and I am happy to take questions. Thanks. And get some links into the chat.
Thank you, Jody. We do have one comment here from Leslie. She was commenting that she had a retreat with their advisors last Saturday. One of the huge frustrations expressed by several participants. We were discussing barriers with the lack of consistent methodology for measuring emissions, apples to apples, not a scattershot of data. Yeah, standardization is a big issue that we hear across the state. So thank you for that presentation, Jody. And just to make really clear, the next step, and maybe you know this better than I do, it's going to be a hearing. And so what we'd like for you to do is consider ways that you can get a letter of support out in advance of that committee hearing. All right, Jody?
Yeah, and the date, Marna, thank you for the question. If you want your letter to be in before the first hearing, I think they need it by the 22nd at noon. But don't let that stop you. Like, we will take your letter at any time. You know, if you can get it by the 22nd, that's great. But anytime you can get the letter is marvelous. You know, this is a long process, longish.
All right, any other questions for Jody? Raise your hand if you have them. Well, I want to say thanks to Jody for her leadership here, and we're excited here at CivicWell to be helping to engage in the legislative process on your behalf. So stay tuned. And like I said, we have lots of more conversations to be had around how we can help overcome barriers to local climate action.
Leslie, I think I put a link to the sign-on letter. No, I'll get that into the link. Sorry about that.
Perfect. Thanks, Jody. You may, feel free to send this along to your legislative folks as well. Okay. So that's going to wrap us up for presentations for today. And we're just going to wrap up with a couple of items from the SEEK team. So if we get that slide back up, not much more to talk about here, but I do want to hand it over to John Van de Voort from our team, who's going to talk a little bit about the latest with the forum. John, are you there?
Hey, I'm here. Sorry, I'm for some reason unable to do two things at once and could not share my screen and turn my video off. Hey folks, so great to see everyone and have everyone here today. Just wanted to do a super quick plug for the forum. We have a link for our newly launched registration page that we will drop in the chat in just a moment. Just want to flag that early bird registration is now open, and it is going to be open until April 16th. Definitely, if you're interested in taking advantage of that early bird option, you're going to want to do so before then. Before I hand it back to Andrew real quick, I do just want to say, shout out, thank everyone who was a part of our call for session proposals process that ended just coming up on 2 weeks ago. We were able to receive a record number of proposals for our forum. So there's definitely, quite a bit to be excited about as we kind of continue to move through the planning process. We're working to lock down final details for the program. We're looking to make those available to everyone early next month. So within the coming weeks. So thank you all so much for your ongoing support, engagement, and more to come on us in terms of final details on the program soon. So yeah, and if you have any questions about registration, the forum, anything in between, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly.
Thanks, John. We're looking forward to seeing you guys all there. Man, we got some good proposals for sessions, so it's going to be a good one. The last thing I want to say here is just a reminder about the Need Have board. We're going to keep this open, so feel free to, at your leisure, add something here, and we'll just keep it open. And I'm seeing some really good engagement on here, so I think this is hopefully helpful for you. All right, next slide, please. It's going to wrap us up probably a few minutes early today. Just want to remind you that we'll be back again on April 11th. And we hope that you invite your friends. So feel free to share the invitation with others. And we're always looking for good ideas for speakers. So like, what programs do you want to know more about? What opportunities do you want to see happen more? What, what organizations and agencies do you want to hear from? I think I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye here. But since we have a few minutes after, everybody who is ready to go can go. And if you want to hang around and share any ideas for future speakers, let's just have a conversation. That would be great. But with that, I'll say a formal thank you for being here. And we'll see you next month. I always appreciate spending the time with you.